Okay, let's get started. Today is going to be a little bit of a different format because we're going to do some simulations and workshops, which means that the audience members can raise their hands or put it in the chat, the answers as I go along, or your suggested ideas about what we need to do in order to counteract the hackers or the attackers or the bad actors here. So we're gonna have a couple scenarios that we're gonna review, and you guys feel free to put your thinking caps on, and I'm gonna tell you how to do it right before we do it, so it'll be a little easier. So we're gonna introduce cybersecurity. What is cybersecurity? And then we're gonna do three workshops, three little issues that we're gonna go over, and we're gonna discuss them. If nobody has the answers, of course I will. I will answer them for you, but I'd appreciate it if you could participate. For the context of these meetings, cybersecurity is NIST, CMMC, PCI, FedRAMP, HIPAA. We talk about the practices and the controls, and those are what we review, what we think cybersecurity is for the purposes of these classes and meetings. Cybersecurity can mean a lot of different things. It could mean, to some people, just means breaches out in the internet that, Azure got breached, Experian got breached, wherever. So the breaches might just be cybersecurity, how to stop those breaches is it. But for our purposes, we look at these controls that the government or bodies of the world come up with, and these issues have controls. The controls need to be met. The controls need to have evidence, and some of the controls are best effort. Some of the controls they describe really clearly as to what they need. Okay, so today, what are we going to think about when we come upon these scenarios? These are best practice methodologies we're going to be using in our minds first. Containment, identification, assessment, eradication, recovery, communication, legal and regulatory compliance, review and analysis of what happened, prevention, and then ultimately training and awareness. So hidden in some of these things are going to be the answers to what we're going to do when these scenarios occur. So we'll look at these for a little bit longer because they're going to be, they're the answers. So containment, identification, assessment, eradication, recovery, communication, legal and regulatory compliance, review and analysis, prevention, and training and awareness. All right, let's get into it. We're going to do it. So an employee clicks on a link leading to a fake login page where they enter their credentials. Within minutes, the attackers gain access to the employee's account, using it to send further phishing emails within the company and access sensitive client data. The IT team notices unusual activity and begins an investigation, tracing it back to a phishing email. So, what are the next steps? Team participants. Anybody want to raise their hand, or anybody want to answer? If not, I'll do it. I'll do it for you. But anybody have anything they want to say?
I'd probably say, hopefully, I have a tool that allows me to pull that email out of everyone else's mailboxes so that other
Okay.
people aren't clicking on it.
Okay. So you're going to do some prevention, and you're gonna attack it with by you. Okay. So you remove all the phishing emails, and then kind of like feel like why did that employee click on that link? Am I training them enough? Do they have the appropriate tools at their disposal in order to learn about what a fake email is? So I need to definitely have a training component within my company, definitely a piece of software or hardware that is able to remove the offending emails. Anything else anybody can think of that would help us here?
The other thing I would do is see if I can determine on a perimeter if we have any connections to maybe either blacklisted sites or data exfiltration occurring so that I can notify my firewall team to block all those outbound communications?
Sure, anti-spam, anti-malware at the perimeter, especially at the next generation firewall would be great. So if you also had like DLP or data loss prevention or something like some advanced anti-spam component like Barracuda, you could definitely put that into effect, or make sure it was working, or get it if you don't have it. So training, anti-malware, anti-virus, anti-ransomware, um, and then you're going to want to actually put this through the motions of, and a lot of these control sets, you're going to want to put it through the motion of triaging the issue, where you take the issue in and you intake it. And when you intake the issue, you're going to create a ticket for it. You're going to create a priority on that ticket. Then you're going to remediate the issue, like we just talked about. What we just talked about were more remediation steps. And then you're going to analyze why it occurred. If you figure out that the employee hadn't been trained on how to tell different phishing emails, then you're going to come up with a phishing email school. You're going to get everyone in your company enrolled in it. And then you're going to you're going to wrap it up and do a post-mortem and say, okay, this employee clicked on this email because they didn't have great training, or they missed the training when it was set up for them. We retrained them, or we gave them additional training on how to spot fake emails or phishing emails. And then you're going to document what happened inside of your ticketing system. And then you may even have a meeting with your board of directors or executives where you go over, what you may need to do in the future, like data exfiltration or data loss prevention, or something else that you can come up with, where you're gonna keep track of what it is that happened, and how to fix it in the future, and what happened and when it happened, and have that all be in your system. Because honestly, you're going to need to produce these events for auditors. Auditors realize that things happen all the time. So if you have no examples of that, they're going to find that very strange. So that these types of things, while they are annoying and not very fun, they help you. The silver lining is that they help you with your whole cybersecurity outlook footprint. If you have good events that occurred and that you took steps and actions to remediate, it means that your system is working and it's functional. If you never have anything, the auditor is going to think that something's wrong, or a company that works with you is going to think that something's wrong. Everybody has phishing emails. Some people, even I, click on a phishing email once in a while, on accident, or just to investigate what it is, if it is actually a phishing email. And so, having the right tools, and also to check to see if the tools I have in place are working. So, those are also the incidents and incident response. And you could even do what's called a risk analysis on how, once you look at your phishing school, you can do a risk analysis on if everybody is working quite well with it. Okay, a leading software development company discovers that proprietary source code for an upcoming product has been leaked online. An internal investigation reveals that the leak was not a result of an external breach, but an insider, a disgruntled employee with access to sensitive data. The company security team worked closely with HR to identify the employee responsible for the leak. What are the next steps? Anybody want to raise their hand or put it in the chat? Anybody? Okay. Incident response. Yes, you would create an incident response for this. Absolutely. Cass Spicer, thanks. Must follow the plan for a breach. Yes. So if you have an incident response, methodology, you're definitely going to go and look at that and see that what steps you need to take in there are. The first step would be most likely to terminate this person. That would be probably the best thing to do. So termination of the employee would stop the leak from continuing. Anybody else could think of another step that we would take after we terminated that employee? Going online and finding where the data is and trying to remove it. Yes, that is a possible, something you could try to do. That's very difficult. I think that everything that's on the internet is maybe there for a certain indefinable amount of time, but you could try. You could put cease and desist out. If it's on the dark web, it's a little harder. But you could have a dark web scanner that figures out where it is. The next thing you could also do, calling a cybersecurity compliance attorney is a good idea, and possibly pressing charges against that employee with the authorities, not only having them terminated, but also arrested and prosecuted for that. That's a crime. Again, right from what Cass was saying, your incident response, you're going to follow that. Again, you're going to create a ticket here. You're going to make it so that you have visibility against the right team. Everybody's notified of in your group that needs to be notified, the managers, HR, the executives. And then you may want to put out a press release or do damage control of some kind. You might want to communicate to your vendor, to your customers, that something has occurred. If it's going to be something that could have a negative effect on you if it were to be found out and that you weren't to be upfront about it. So you want to have at least good comms going about what's going on, maybe even within the company, that person was let go, and that further communication with him is not recommended or allowed. You're also going to want to archive what you've got. So if you have data information like his emails, his file folders, his structures, his logins, all of his information needs to be kept in a attorney hold. It's like a legal hold, it's called. So you're going to want to put a legal hold on all of his stuff, so that when an investigator comes in to press charges, you have evidence. Because if you don't do that, you're going to find that it's really difficult. Some IT people go in and they want to flush out his email account, delete it. They want to flush out his his logins and all that stuff, because they think it's like poisonous to their environment, but it's not. You got to put a legal hold on that stuff and keep it so that you can press charges and prosecute that person. This actually happens more often than you think. Disgruntled employees frequently give out not just product code, but more of proprietary information or personal information and sell it on the dark web. And it's just more prevalent than you would believe. So another thing you could do in an extreme case is that you could go to the HR department and try to figure out why the person did it, or what the reason was that they might have done it, and take steps to, if they felt like they were slighted by something, or if they were, treated poorly by a person or something like that, you could try to figure it out. I mean, it's going to behoove you to do some sort of investigation to try to figure out what would prompt this person, other than greed, or it could have been that their working conditions weren't optimal, and that they felt like they were being abused and that they wanted to get revenge. So this again happens more often than you think. And so you might want to take steps within your organization to improve how you treat your employees. I always tell people who ask me if they're good managers, I tell them there's really no manager school. I mean, there are schools about how to be a business manager, but when you get when you go to those classes about how to be a good manager, or you read a book on how to be a good manager, and then you go and you try to implement those best practices against the people you're managing, you'll find out, you'll be rudely awakened. It is not the same. So how do you treat your employees is incredibly important, and it can cause a lot of damage internally. Again, Cass, thanks for your answer. All of those are good suggestions, but I would couple it with termination, and then investigation, and then maybe some kind of remediation about how you're treating your employees. Okay. Ransomware. Healthcare data analysis company experiences a sudden network slowdown during a routine day. Initial investigations reveal that several critical systems have been infected with ransomware, encrypting valuable research data and demanding a hefty ransom for its release. The IT team quickly isolates the infected system to prevent the spread of ransomware to other parts of the network. They identify the source of the infection as an employee who inadvertently downloaded a malicious attachment. What are the next steps? Anybody? Ransomware. This happens all the time to cities and organizations that have very weak IT budgets, like, you know, uh, small companies, anything will experience ransomware. You hear about these attacks all the time, but what do you do as a cybersecurity person, as a person trying to stay compliant with NIST or CMMC? What's the next steps here? What are we going to do? Anybody? The first thing we could do is we could call attorneys. Yes. Okay, so a lot of people think that you can decrypt ransomware. So a lot of people like slow down and say, well, let's see what we have here. What kind of encryption is it? And there are some evidence, there were some situations where some of the ransomware that was done was encrypt, you could decrypt it, but that is very rare. It's like 1 in a million. So you really can't decrypt these ransomwares. So you kind of like have to give up if you don't have one key thing. Does anybody know what you need to have really working super well in order to recover from a ransomware destroyed machine or network drive? Backups. Yes, Greg, backups. So you need to take care of your backups. You need to have backups in more than one location. So I call it the rule of 3. Thanks, Cass, as well. The rule of 3: have backups locally on site so that you can do quick restores. Have backups remotely in the cloud so you can, if something were to happen devastating your environment, you could then go to the offsite backups. And then I always want to have a third option. Sometimes it could be tapes or a hard drive that has the backup data that's at some executive's home or in data safe or some physical place other than where you're at, so that you have some way of restoring that data. So without the backups, you're going to be in trouble. Now, what do you need to do for backups? So the first thing you need to do is you need to keep track of if your backups are working or not. A lot of the times people run backups, and they just let them go. Every month, every 2 months, you need to restore data from your backups. It's like a backup test. If you do your backup and then you restore, you have good backups. If you do backups and you don't restore, you do not have good backups. So one person on your IT team, you should pick a file somewhere randomly on your network and ask the IT person, don't delete it, maybe rename it with 1 letter or something, and then ask the IT person to restore that file for you. See how long it takes? And that's called your RTO or RPO. These are times that it takes to restore your files and how do you get back into operational state. So you want to ask your IT person every quarter, every month to restore a file from backup. It tells you a lot of things. It tells you, number 1, if it's working. Number 2, If it doesn't work, can you fall back to your secondary? And if that doesn't work, can you fall back to your third? If you have 3 backups, it's going to be really hard for you to fail. Now, I've also seen it where people have been backing up data that's already corrupted or encrypted. So this is a perfect time to tell and figure out if the backup is good or not, if it's working. Okay, so again, we need to ingest the data. We need to take it in as a ticket. The ransomware occurred. We need to process that ticket. We need to go through the incident response system. We need to have a meeting and talk about what happened and go through the process of understanding what it is that this person did. And then again, we need to train this person. We need to do training on what to download, what not to download. If it was a phishing email or it was just an email from an inside resource, or they went to a website and downloaded an application that was infected with ransomware. Sometimes, especially when you have engineers, software engineers, they go around downloading things all the time because they want to make their jobs easier, or they want to do some particular task faster. They will download things to their computers all the time. How do you stop this? Well, there's an intense discussion within the NIST framework, within CMMC, within HIPAA. All of these different frameworks go with the concept of deny all, allow only what you need. So denying all means that, unfortunately, that engineer won't be able to download applications to his workstation because you won't allow it. You only allow applications that have been on an approved list. Now, this may cause a lot of trouble within an organization that has engineers, because engineers value their freedom to download applications and install them and run them. So if you have a strict policy against this, this may seem like they are being, their capabilities are being curtailed. And it's true, because you want to avoid this from occurring. 9 times out of 10, it's not the engineers, though. It's like someone like that. It just clicks on an attachment they think is from their son or daughter or whatever, and it's got like a picture in it, and they think it's going to be cute. Or they download something from like a site. They thought the picture looked great. They download it or something like that. That's when it really occurs. You can't really stop that per se, but you could a little bit. There are provisions within and thought processes within CMMC and NIST and HIPAA where you have something called a remote desktop or a virtual desktop, VDI, RDP, remote desktop, versus having them use your computer. The remote desktop solves a lot of problems within all of these infrastructures. The remote desktop, it's like a place you go. Maybe it doesn't let you down. Maybe it doesn't even let you go to the internet. Maybe there's no browser. I've seen remote desktops without browsers, so you can't even go to the internet. You can only perform a certain functional task, and maybe just your job that you're doing, creating documents, making PowerPoint presentations, looking at plans or whatever. These remote desktop environments are great because they allow you to control what can be and what can't be downloaded or installed. They allow you to also put endpoint detection and response and anti-ransomware software on that computer. And it really protects you. It protects your company. It protects you. Virtual desktops are the way to go all around, because of the fact that you can control it way better. If something does happen to the virtual desktop, you can turn it off, remove it, or recreate it quickly by just basically almost from a copy and paste perspective. You just copy a template from another one, paste it again, and let that person re-log in and set up their profile, and everything's back to normal. So you get productivity out of the remote desktops very quickly, and that solves a problem a lot of the times of ransomware, phishing, and bad attachments. Also, you're going to, process this through your system, chew it with your ticketing system, look at your incident response plan, and then make decisions. Maybe you need a better endpoint detection and response software. You may need to make a change. You may need to add something, so on and so forth. So that is scenario 3. Okay, so what did all this tell us? Is that we need to have some sort of a mechanism that keeps track of all of the processes and the procedures and the different things that we need to do. We talked about, having a ticketing system and having incident response plans and where they are located and who has access to them and what do we do, what happened, how we fix it, do we comply, are we keeping track of everything, how do we handle legal holds, what our backup systems are, how they work, who has access to them, all these different things. You have literally thousands of things that you need to keep track of. Why would you not keep track of them unless you're using a compliance platform like Lionfish? So you need to use some sort of a platform that keeps track of all those components. It's also going to keep track of the incident and what happened, and it'll help you figure out what to do in the future because it's got policies and procedure templates in there. It's got classes, tutorials, all these different kinds of pieces of information in there that'll help you process through these incidents. Now, again, this is the important slide we talked about, and you can get, of course, the slideshow from Jeremy. He'll send it to you, and but we talked about each of these items. Let's go over them again. Immediate containment. We have to have an IT team or a person who's responsible for IT to do these things. If we didn't have an IT team, we couldn't have stopped all these bad things from occurring. Identification, what is being affected? A lot of the times I run into issues where no one knows what systems or what workstations are. The workstation is named something funky like MBA PC SPF 563. It's like, what is that? Who owns it? Where is it? Sometimes that can create delay in stopping things like ransomware, where you just don't know where that machine is or who has it or who owns it and how to stop it, maybe how to go in and stop it. Assessment is part of your incident response plan, where you're looking at it and seeing what is going on, what's happening to my environment. And you need to do an assessment. You need to document that assessment in your incident response plan. Eradication is you're taking the steps to remediate it. Eradication might be termination of an employee. It might be, stopping a machine from being on the network. It might be, like Cass said, just going around and removing all of the bad information, just destroying it, getting rid of it. Recovery, we talked about backups. That's what this means. How do you get the data back? The rule of 3 is the best. Test your backup systems on a regular basis. Communication, you may need to talk to the police, an attorney. You may need to talk to the public, your customers, your vendors, your board of directors, your own employees. Who are you talking to? So you need to have your communications plan ready to go. Your attorneys are going to tell you what it is that what has happened, how it affects you, and what liability and what you have going on for you, what you need to do, maybe take steps or pay them to create a document or something like that. Then when it's all over, what happened? How did it happen? How do we avoid? The next thing is how to avoid it, to actually implement the how to avoid it process. So you want to review and analyze what it is that you've done and then prevent it in the future. And then prevention, you want to take, software, hardware, training, hiring practices, how you prevent this from happening in the future. And then you want to train everybody where it's needed. Phishing school. If you handle sensitive documents, you want to train people on how to handle sensitive documents. You want to have sexual harassment training in your organization. You want to have possibly bribery training. And, I've even seen companies give training about how to receive gifts from vendors or from customers. So you're going to have, you can have your training be as robust as possible and that will create a great environment. So if you do all these things, whenever you have an incident, you'll be in good shape. And so that is the workshop. Those were the problems. You can see them, get them, download them, and review them, and discuss them with us in the future. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything that might have happened to them where they use any of this system of reaction? Anybody? You're quiet group. Hey, I've seen like a lot of things occur. Ransomware, very much so. Yes, I've recovered from ransomware even without backups, where some people's machines were not backed up. They were just, their machines, so we had to restore them from scratch and just start over. I've seen a ransomware wipe out like all the data of a company, and where they've gone out of business because they can't function anymore, because they had no backups. So they would come to me and say, "What should I do? How do I get rid of this encryption?" The answer is you can't. And if all of your company runs on the data set that you have, then you're literally going to go out of business. You can't continue to do business. Maybe the data you've got has been acquired over dozens of years and it can't be recovered. So yeah, backup. And then I've seen companies that have had great backups. It worked every single time. But the size of the backup files was not the same size as what was being backed up. And then it was because there was corruption on the data that they were backing it up to, so that the backups were invalid, and no one had ever done a restore job. So when we started to do restore jobs on all the backups, they all failed. And the companies that, like Veritas said, "Oh yeah, you know what? None of these backups have been good for the entire time you've been doing them." So I've seen that as well. Terrible news to get from your backup provider. And then having only one backup, I've seen that. At least have on-site. If you're going to do a backup to the cloud, that's awesome. But have an on-site backup like to a hard drive or something, or to a USB drive, anything. You just have to have more than one. And so I've seen that. I've seen bad actors a lot, where people have gone in and, you know, um, even just creating terrible reviews for a person, for their company. Um, you know, you can tell something's wrong with them, or something's wrong with the organization. Not to say that people are always at fault. Sometimes the organization creates situations and people, responses from people that are not a surprise, right? If you have a hard company that is treating people really badly, and they do that, and the person retaliates by, selling customer data, then yeah, it's not going to be unexpected. But then there are people who like try to steal customers and clients, or say things that they shouldn't say. And so therefore having a great working environment is important. Having, treating people with respect, treating people like with more than just respect, appreciating their work, telling them they do good jobs. I know this is just a bizarre thing to talk about during a cybersecurity course, but bad actors are definitely something that happens. So you need to take, you're sitting there going beep bop boop bop beep, computer computer computer. I have to get multi-factor authentication. I have to have backups. But yeah, you also need to treat people appropriately and with respect. And if you do that, the bad actor scenario will not occur very, or will be very rare. Anybody got anything? Nothing. I haven't seen nothing in here other than the thanks, Cass and Greg. for participating. That was very helpful. And whoever spoke up, I don't remember who that was, but thank you so much for helping out with the workshop, with the class. And Jeremy will be able to provide you guys with these slides, and you could, you know, review them, think about what you would do in those scenarios. And if your organization can do these things here on this slide, this one slide, if you can do all these things, great. If you can't, you should work towards, you know, achieving one of them, or the one you're missing. All right, that's it, I guess. Thank you everybody for coming. Have a great weekend and get your slides.